What's he listening to?
The Young God Podcast.
God Gang, welcome. Welcome to the second part of my ego trip. As in, I'm taking you on a trip through the nuances of the ego. Not that I'm actually ego tripping. Full disclosure, I have been working on this episode for years. As far back as season 4. I'm talking 2022, fam. In that time, I've observed the ego at work in myself and in others, and it's been real. Hold on. That's the ego. That's the ego talking. Greedy, motherfucker. I want. Sometimes it's okay to just be. You know how they say, be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it? It's referring to how our ego desires can be misleading. You get the thing and you realize that it wasn't what you thought it would be, or you just want more and more until it ruins you. The ego doesn't care whether you're equipped to handle the thing, whether it's good for you, whether you deserve or even need the thing, as long as the desire is satisfied. But I digress. I was telling you the history behind my fascination with this topic, and the main thing I've been observing that led me to make not one, but 2 ego-related episodes is a thing called pop psychology. So there's actual psychology, and then there's social media pop psychology. Pop psychology is mainly oversimplified, anecdotal, and unsubstantiated claims pushed by people who self-diagnosed themselves with some mental disorder and then branded themselves as mental health experts and advocates. On the other hand, actual psychology relies on rigorous research, evidence-based approaches, and peer-reviewed studies to understand and explain human behavior. For example, actual psychology says gaslighting is an abuse tactic where you are manipulated to question your reality, memory, or sanity. Pop psychology says gaslighting is when someone lies to you, questions you, or disagrees with you over what happened. Actual psychology says a trigger is something that causes sudden increase in symptoms, like flashbacks in PTSD or compulsions in OCD. But pop psychology describes being triggered as when something makes you uncomfortable or annoyed. See the difference? Now, to my mind, the most egregious thing pop psychology has put out is this strange purity-fixated approach to healing that tries to eradicate and sanitize suffering off of every surface of the human experience. Real, actual psychology acknowledges that struggle and suffering are the most human thing and explores how they can be understood and integrated. Are you with me?
Yes!
Another destructive dream pushed by pop psychology is the idea of ego death, killing the ego, like I discussed in the last episode. And this is where I started to get concerned. Pop psychology advocates for the killing of the ego to sort of disconnect the self from trauma. But actual psychology tells us that struggle and suffering are the keys to any meaningful spiritual growth, if and only if you're able to frame the experience properly. That's where ego comes in. You see, your relationship with your ego determines how you deal with suffering. The ego is the part of you that resists the lessons that exist in your suffering. It turns you into a victim, or worse, a villain. The ego says, I shouldn't have to suffer. And that thought automatically makes you suffer so much more. It's a paradox. The truth is that you need to say yes to suffering before you can transcend it. But pop psychology wants you to kill the ego and disconnect completely from your current and future suffering. That's a dangerous game, and I'm here to bring some much needed truth, light, and clarity to the ego experience.
That part.
If the question is to have a big ego or kill my ego, I would rather have a big ego. Thank you very much. Having no ego is infinitely worse than having a huge ego. With a massive ego, I can build and better my life, even though I'd harm others to achieve it. With a small ego, I will not have the ambition to achieve. In fact, I would be miserable, living vicariously through the lives of others, celebrating their wins like they were my own, never really doing anything myself. The fact is, I shouldn't have to pick between a big, small, or a dead ego. There's a fourth, more sustainable, more wholesome option. What if I trained my ego to see productive behaviors in its best interest? Now there's a thought. I'm here to tell you that you can either feed your ego or educate it. One makes you loud and wrong. The other makes you legendary. And if you know anything about this podcast, we do nothing less than legendary. My name is Rodney Amokache, and you're welcome to The Young God, a podcast for legends.
Yeah. Stand back, gotta talk. Watch cost.
Shall we try an exercise? Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Now, imagine your life fell apart. Imagine things got really bad and you lost everything, and your options included moving back in with your parents, crashing with a friend on their couch, publicly asking for help, or some other perceived regression in your life situation. Really imagine this. Really put yourself in the thick of the worst possible outcome. Make this image as real as it can get. Sit with that image for a bit. I want you to realize how just the mere thought of an imaginary reality of this sort is making you panic. I want you to be aware of where your thoughts go during times of discomfort. Know that whenever you get anxious, the main reasons are always either not wanting to disappoint certain people or worrying how strangers will perceive you. On a deeper level, it's not so much that we care what others think if we fail. It's that we're worried about what we'll think about ourselves if we fail. Whatever you think others think about you is really what you think about you. It's all projection. Even when speaking to others, you are still speaking to yourself. The way you view others starts with your perception of yourself. Your subconscious mind only knows you. It assumes that everything is about you. Every time you think and speak ill of someone else, it assumes you're talking about yourself. That's why Jesus Christ once said, "Judge not, lest ye yourself be judged." So, whenever you're faced with a hard decision and feel like there's no solution, realize that there's actually a lot of solutions you haven't considered because ego. Solutions that you fear would make people see you as less or lose respect for you. The truth is, and I've had to learn this myself, is that once you let go of how you're perceived, options start showing up. And then you have to face yourself, your pride, your ego. Holding on means you will likely do something stupid to avoid meeting yourself. I mean, how many times have we fallen our own hands? Right? Right? Ego is one hell of a drug, fam. Half the harm that is done in this world is due to people who want to feel important. They don't mean to do harm, but the harm does not interest them, or they do not see it, or they justify it, because they are absorbed in the endless struggle to think well of themselves. We play this perception game with ourselves, and we inadvertently drag others into it. We mostly see each other through the flaws of our egos. Vanity, fear, desire, competition, lust, and the like are the lens through which we see people. That's why there's so much disconnection, misunderstanding, and hate. That's why relationships don't blossom into their highest level. Ego games are always in play, except in that rare case where, through love, understanding, and humility, we see each other for who we are, not what we have or what they can give us. When people operate authentically with each other, God is the energy that flows between them. That's what Jesus meant when he said, "Where 2 or 3 are gathered in his name, he is there." The key word is in his name. The name of Jesus is synonymous with love, understanding, and humility. If those 3 things are present, heaven happens. Speaking of heaven, in the previous episode, I focused on the psychological aspect of the ego. But there's a spiritual side to it, if you can imagine. What if I told you that the ego is a reflection of your relationship with God? And to make my case, I came up with 2 acronyms for E.G.O. The first acronym for ego is edging God out. Here, the ego is heavily involved in every aspect of the inner and outer world. There's literally no room for God, for faith, for magic. The ego is fully in control. This is the unenlightened ego. The ego that is selfish and overly individualistic. The ego that is inflated and fragile and desperate, clinging to social identities, attaching to things and people. This is the ego that is overly dependent on limited human intellect. It leaves no room for the heart and intuition. This ego creates a life ruled by logic and devoid of magic. The second acronym for ego is egging God on. Here, the ego is not as involved, and there is room for God. The intuition and the soul are the guiding forces. This is the enlightened ego. This is the ego that is aligned with God's will, the ego that is balanced with heart, augmented by empathy, and aware of the interconnectedness of all things. It sees everything and everyone as an extension of itself. It's no longer just about itself. It considers the greater good. It puts God first, others next, and itself last, because enlightened self-interest. If you listen to the previous episode, you'll understand that reference. This ego operates in terms of what is true, right, and good, not what is expedient and immediate. It manifests as truth, love, patience, courage, and understanding. This is faith in the true sense of the word. God leading, while the ego enjoys the ride. So there you have it. 2 acronyms for E.G.O. Edging God out and egging God on. Which one would you say manifests in your life experience? Think about it. Please forgive me for interrupting your vibe right now, but I just had to shout out the legendary Young God community on WhatsApp. That is an exclusive group where committed, consistent listeners of the podcast gather to share their thoughts on the themes discussed. If you would like to connect with me and other members of this community, you can join the group via the link in the description of this episode or via any of the links on my social media at I am the Young God on Twitter and at the Young God Pod on Instagram. Do follow, do subscribe, do leave a review if you're enjoying this episode, share with your friends and fam, and now let's get back to the show. One aspect of life where the ego needs to chill and let God lead is in the making of art. Listen to Quincy Jones, the producer behind a lot of the 80s and 90s biggest hits, particularly Michael Jackson's. Tell it.
We have always told the musicians, and I've felt that from the bottom of my soul, that let's leave some space to let God walk through the room, because that's when the real serious things happen, and it's the divine intervention, and it's the divinity is really what it's about, cause and manifestation. That's cause is God's job, and so once you have delineated the lines of responsibility, some beautiful things can happen, and that the footprints that God leaves in the studio is you can always hear it on the tape.
A wise man once said, art is a collaboration between God and the artist, and the less the artist does, the better. That's the essence of spirituality. Sometimes your ego, your need to control everything, your need for things to be perfect, your over-attachment to your work, the over-exaggeration of the importance of your work, your fear for the public's reaction, all make it so that you can never do your best work. But the most productive, prolific, and perfected artists and performers in any field see their work through the lens of service. They get over themselves and just serve. They serve God and their audience. They are free from all fear of failure, perfectionism, procrastination, and other obstacles to the work itself. All that is left is love.
'Cause what about love? What about love? What about love?
Love for the craft, love for God that gave the gift, and love for the audience they serve. They use their gift to entertain, teach, inspire, and reduce suffering. Excellence, as I always say, is the best evangelism. And the greatest people, the truest artists, sacrifice ego for excellence. Like, ego is the saboteur of excellence. The fastest way to kill your artistic output is to make your identity depend on the outcome. Psychologists call it ego involvement. When failing at something becomes failure as a person, your brain starts avoiding the whole thing. Not because you don't care, but because you care too much about how you're perceived. That's why creatives procrastinate. Procrastination is basically your ego trying to protect you from your mediocrity. But great work requires vulnerability. That's where God comes in. The enlightened ego allows you to suck, with the faith that facing your mediocrity head on will make you better. So it's like, detach who you are from what you do. Your outcomes aren't your identity. They're just data, evidence that you're active, that you're showing up. Also, on another note, you may have heard me say in a past episode that some people are too selfish to be great artists. This is because creativity is at its most potent when the sense of self falls away and reveals something deeper. But some artists have an ego that is making so much noise, demanding so much attention, that they can't really do more than they are.
Man, I swear to God, that shit just gets so deep.
Being an artist taught me how to get over myself in order to go beyond myself. My ego says to me, you are capable of being one of the greatest disruptors of your generation. God responds, but you need to quiet your ego for that artistry to emerge. Learning to let God lead is why I stay prolific, brilliant, and healthy in all my creative endeavors, especially this podcast. Experts call this negative capability, whereby you're able to negate the ego and its anxieties. Imagine being so calm in your creativity, in no rush to make a final judgment or come to a conclusion about anything or anyone, entertaining multiple concepts, emotions, and thoughts at the same time while continuing to observe what's going on. confronting ambiguous or contradictory evidence and not being disturbed or needing them to make sense right away. This ability to withstand what seems mysterious, to manage the lack of knowing something with certainty, is the primary quality of genius, no matter your profession. Negative capability is a major key with how fast the world is evolving. The only way you'll stay in the game long term is if you kill your concept of an identity. One day you're walking around with your chest out for identifying as this or that, or having gone to this school or worked in this field. The next day you're freaking out about how that profession or label is no longer relevant. Life comes at you fast. Like, it requires so much effort to push through mental resistance when so much of how you feel about yourself is tied to all these man-made symbols, labels, and ideas of success. Things can change quickly and violently, so the best self-definition is something along the lines of, I am a perpetual, adaptable, and curious person, open to all possibilities. Forget the sunk costs and what you did or didn't do in the past. Remove the stubborn ego around how things are supposed to be and watch yourself elegantly course correct around the reality of things. That's when the game gets good.
Oh yeah, right now!
DJ Ill Will.
DJ Rockstar.
Now that you have all this background information about the psychology of things, it is on to the second phase of this episode. Learning to regulate the ego. Since we have established that the ego is not a static entity, that it is multidimensional, it means that it can be regulated, molded. This is where emotional intelligence, wisdom, and the grace of God come in. Yes, the grace of God, because, the ego is a force that is not easily tamed. It is a menace, my goodness. You need EQ, wisdom, and grace, all the above, acting in unison to massively regulate the range and power of your ego at every moment in time. Imagine being able to consciously, precisely fine-tune and adjust the exact ego drive you need for different situations, moments, and people. That's the game within the game. For example, your ego may go full power in a competitive sport, but low power when you're with your parents or lover. And even in those situations, there are micro adjustments for different moments within those situations. Let's say your parents or lover crosses a boundary. You may step up your ego energy in order to enforce boundaries. These are mental quadratic equations sound people are solving. This is why emotional intelligence, wisdom, and the grace of God are the tools. Because every moment in time requires a different level of ego. Emotional intelligence lets you know the level you need. Wisdom tells you the right level for each moment. And the grace of God is for poise, for when you're tested beyond your level of wisdom and EQ. Are you with me?
Yes!
Also, the better you get at regulating your ego, the better your ego becomes at regulating itself. You won't have to think about it. Your ego will recalibrate itself to your exact personality, pattern, and purpose. It will align itself to your values, what you're trying to achieve, and who you want to be. It no longer merely seeks to feed. It actually wants you to succeed. It even takes into account the egos in other people so as to not get you in difficult social situations. This is what we call alignment. When the ego, the self, and the identity are all in agreement of what you need to operate at an optimum level within your current reality. Equilibrium. Now enter intuition. Intuition is nothing logical. It's more magical, actually. It is truth that is felt. It is the quiet, wordless knowing that arises from deep, deep, deep within. Emphasis on deep, because shallow people don't hear their intuition. They haven't gone deep enough within to meet their intuition. Their egos are too loud to hear the whisper. They're too distracted by the world and its noise. The intuition is supposed to be a guide, but most people have an integration problem. To be clear, integration is when you're able to balance what you want, what you need, what is right, and what is possible. Does that make sense? Shall I come again? Integration is when you're able to balance what you want, what you need, what is right, and what is possible. Everybody has an ego and an intuition, two voices that speak from two different places. Intuition whispers from the soul. Ego speaks from structure. Ideally, both voices operate in tandem, but most people have an integration problem, like I said. For example, they might be guided by beauty or truth or faith, but they also feel envy, vanity, and let's say lust. The ego wants A, while the intuition wants B. If the ego and the intuition are not integrated into something that's unified, you're going to be pulled apart. You're going to be torn apart internally. That internal conflict is what manifests as indecision, anxiety, and other mental, emotional challenges. People break down not because they're weak, but because they're split. They're fragmented into many pieces mentally and emotionally, and they don't know how to make sense of it all. So they show up inauthentically. And the soul absolutely detests hypocrisy and inauthenticity. It will wreak havoc on your mind and body until you align your thoughts, your words, and your actions. The ego is loud, so it always wins. But when the ego is integrated, your intuition becomes audible. You hear both. And now you're able to make informed decisions, effective decisions, God decisions. That's why when people say that they're intuitive, I get skeptical. I observe them closely to see if it's their ego talking, if they're just trying to sound cool and self-important. Are they intuitive in the real sense of the word? Not that full intuition that is more a lucky guess than spiritual intelligence. And it's very easy to tell which is which, because at its core, intuition is that internal call to make gradual changes in your life that lead toward ongoing evolution, development, and transcendence. So if your life ain't changing for the better, your intuition is in the gutter. Let us pause for a moment and catch our breaths, shall we? Recenter yourself to this moment by taking several deep breaths. Inhale through your nose. Exhale through your mouth. Again. In through your nose. Hold it. Hold it. Out through your mouth. Let's resume. I know I've said that integration is a flex, but it's no fun and games. It is not for the faint of heart. That's why most people can't do it. It involves confronting your trauma and challenging your deeply held beliefs and dismantling your self-image all at once at the same time. Scary stuff. There are levels to it, and they can take years. Integrating the ego begins with learning to be present, followed by letting down your guard long enough to let the healing begin. I did my integration work the hard way, in case you're wondering. Through isolation, acquiring knowledge and applying it, learning skills and mastering them, figuring out my purpose, and choosing a career path based on how it would develop my character, not the achievements I would get. I had help from books, movies, music, mentors, media, nature, Everything around me was instruction. I did all the above for years. And reality gave me feedback in terms of the quality of my conversations, relationships, mental health, creativity, my vision, and the uncommon experiences I was having. And then one day, like film trick, one day, I finally met my ego, my inner guardian, the little god that powered my whole life, the one who has been with me through it all. I became hyper aware. It's he, whatever, he became real. No longer a vague concept from books. And fam, can I tell you, it was surreal. And I was ready for it. I was ready for the moment. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I honored and sat with him. Not took over, not killed, replaced, nor erased. Honored. I gave him a seat, faced him, and we came to an understanding. We're in this together. We're also in this for a good time and a long time. So we have to carry ourselves in a sustainable manner in order to see the story to its climactic end. Can we collaborate on this? Can I count on you to not undermine me? Can you trust in my direction? In return, I will give you, this is my ego I'm talking to, I will give you the best opportunities to flex. I will never diminish you, but you cannot override me. Do we have a deal? Deal. Also, we will identify as a God made in the image of God. This is the biggest, most perfect, most infinite, most versatile lens there is, and you will run your ego trips through it, and it will be good. And the rest is history. That's how I integrated my big ego. When I say I am self-made, this is what I mean. I am not a passive product of my environment or my ego. I made myself into a person who can utilize the ego with perfect precision. So much so that strangers describe their experience of me like so.
No, I want him to
I
hear
said
what you
it.
said about his
and I
ego.
said also, do you really think my ego is heavily involved in my work,
Okay.
my podcast? I said, not heavily, to be honest. It is involved, but it's not heavily. It is. Because when Rodney is talking about my looks, my this,
No,
that's
Rodney
ego
has
now.
oh my god, he
That's-
has an ego, but
That's ego.
that's
But
yeah, he's
you
able
also
to have a
know
hold on it.
that
He's
he's
able
humble.
to yeah. That's the self-awareness
it's
thing.
annoying.
Yeah,
It's annoying.
It's actually annoying.
It's
Someone-
actually fucking
Yeah.
annoying.
Oh my
Because
God.
you're just like, how are you
He's
able to
actually yeah. So
humble?
the behavior you would have expected from someone who is that
who is that
Who carries
confident?
himself that
Who is,
yeah.
like, who is that? Like, it's almost like
he will balance it out with
it's almost like
almost extreme humility on the other end. So you're
it's almost
there
like he licks
my
his
God.
ego like this before he opens his mouth to talk, and then he'll now still come down to your level and still tell you I am sorry and actually mean it. And I'm just like, see me, I don't like what you're doing. I don't like it.
He doesn't have any inner hurt child.
When I said feedback from reality, this is what I meant. Random moments where people express the experience of me. How lucky am I that someone was recording that conversation that day? I wasn't even in the room when those words were said. I never expected it. And now, it serves as confirmation. Just in case everything I'm saying sounds too good to be true. The proof is in the pudding of this podcast. When you're integrated, people will talk about you like you're freaking Batman. This could be your experience, if you want. Unfortunately, there is no map, no one way, just your way. Your process will be based on your circumstance, your destiny, and how badly you want it. The most important thing is awareness, being present, noticing and identifying the things happening within you. And when the time comes, when your ego reveals itself, you will be ready. And be sure to honor him when you encounter each other. Yeah, it's a mutual encountering because like I said, the ego doesn't know you, doesn't care about you. It just exists as a force within doing its thing. So when you meet each other, honor each other. Self-love is so important in this journey. You cannot hate yourself into a better person. You cannot be ashamed of who you are, what's inside of you, and expect to heal. Fam, integration is the real deal. It is the perfect personality. This is how you become a god.
Every negative thing that's holding you back from enlightenment is due to the payoff that you're getting secretly from the ego. You say, oh, I don't get any payoff. Oh, yes, you do. Each one of these negative feelings is hooked in with others. Each one is hooked in with others. Not one of them ever exists alone. You're angry because you're prideful, because you're disappointed, because you didn't acquire a gain. You see, you've got 5 or 6 linked together. So each brick that you pull out weakens the whole wall. And eventually the whole ego collapses because you see that there's only one thing that you've been ever getting out of it all the time. And that's the narcissistic core. The ego loves to juice negativity because that's how it survives. Without it, it can't survive. Spiritual work is tremendous.
The ego is fascinating, isn't it? It is always seeking for something to attach itself to in order to uphold and strengthen its illusion. And it will readily attach itself to your problems. This is why, for so many people, a large part of their sense of self is intimately connected with their problems. Every negative thing that's holding them back from growth and change is due to the secret payoff they're getting from the ego. So the last thing they want is to become free of their problems. They just don't know it, because that would mean loss of self. If you listen to certain people talk about themselves, you'll notice that they have a great deal of unconscious ego investment in their pain and suffering. So, I'm just trying to put you on game, because shit is real. You negate the ego instantly when you remind yourself that shit happens and it's not always about you. That's humility. That's God entering. Humility is a hard posture that most people don't fully understand. I would even say that humility is the closest thing to a momentary death the ego can achieve. And in that light, it's alright, because what doesn't die can't live. What doesn't live can't change, and what doesn't change can't learn.
Lord is my witness.
Shall I come again? What doesn't die can't live. What doesn't live can't change, and what doesn't change can't learn. Let all that shit go and grow. This is a reminder to choose what's good for your soul, not your ego. And as I said earlier, the only way is through awareness, being present. When you are in a hurry to do something, hold back for a few seconds or a minute. Sleep on it even. That's all it takes to shift from the compulsive ego to the conscious soul. That's the difference between responding and reacting. Everyone thinks they've tamed their ego until someone prettier or richer walks in, or they don't get the credit, or a situation doesn't go their way. That's when the mask slips. You will know you have arrived when you can observe your own inner conflict and pause before you project how you feel onto what is happening around you. One last thing I should really make clear is that these last 2 episodes on the ego are not exhaustive. There's so much more in the rabbit hole that cannot be covered in an hour. This is all just to get you thinking about yourself and your mental health and your psychology a little differently. To know why you do the things you do, why you feel the way you feel, to check yourself and correct yourself before you what? Wreck yourself. I have observed how pop psychology sold millions of people cheap, dangerous dreams about mental health. And I want my people to know the difference so that we can get real healing, not pop healing, not palliative placebo healing. I use my experiences to show you what self-mastery looks like so that you can figure out your own path. This is my gift to you. You're welcome. But also, thank you for listening, for keeping an open mind, for your support. Until next week. In fact, next week, I'm releasing yet another ego-related episode. Oh, you thought it was over? You thought we're done? Oh no. I have one more bullet in the chamber. The final part of the trilogy. And this time, it's about the alter ego. To be honest, I didn't even know it was a trilogy until this very moment. Look at God. Look at the serendipity of things. And this is what it's like when your ego is operating in tandem with your intuition. Things like this happen all the time, every time, and it's just a flex. It's just this is the young God.
This God talk. This God talk. Let God talk.
It brings some excitement to the word of God.